What's going on, folks? Yo, it's your main man, Rick the Dawn. Hey, it's been a long time. I missed y'all, man. Look, I got to tell you, this was a pleasant day, and part of that day or this day has a lot to do with the movie I just watched. Listen, this episode is brought to you by the Really Hood Podcast. It is available everywhere that you listen to podcasts, so please go and check it out and leave a 5-star feedback, and just do it because you're a good person. But let's jump right in, y'all. This movie, is it better than Child's Play? Is it better than Child's Play? Absolutely. And I mean every version of Child's Play. The only Child's Play that stands a chance with this M3GAN movie is the first two. After that, there's no other Child's Play within the series that can compete with this film. Not only because M3GAN is smarter in the way that they deliver their punches. I'm using a lot of bad references here, but not only in the way that they deliver their story, they deliver their punchlines, their jokes, their comedy, their scares. It's just a classier version of what we're used to. In fact, if you look at the poster for M3GAN, it says that friendship has evolved. Yeah, that's kind of how yeah, that's it's an accurate way to put this. This felt like Child's Play evolved. And that is not to put down the Child's Play series, because without Child's Play, there's no M3GAN. See, I'm not that kind of person who forgets the past and just puts whatever's most recent or relevant in front of all of that. Because if not for the Child's Play blueprint, M3GAN would not be this good. But from a technical analysis standpoint, M3GAN outsmarts the old Child's Play. The old Child's Play seems to take a lot longer to get to the excitement. Yes, this film does have a very, very slow build-up, but you're still interested because, hey, this doll looks so real. I mean, when you look at the Child's Play doll, and this entire review will not be a comparison, but I just want to get this out the way. If you look at the Child's Play doll, it looks like a little kid's toy. But when you look at the M3GAN doll, there were several times when I'm looking at the screen and I'm saying to myself, dude, that looks like a real person. And, I was really happy with this film crew for showing so much of the behind the scenes magic. And I didn't think they would do that because you kind of want to, the magician never shows his tricks or the way that he or she does her tricks. So, I really appreciated seeing the background. So I do know that from time to time, a real little girl would play M3GAN, but it just outsmarts it in so many different ways. The protagonist is older, smarter, more whippier in terms of her dialogue. And and the kills are a little smarter. I mean, if you look back in that particular genre, it was just about hack and slash. It's like, hey, that's all it was. Freddy, claws, Jason, axe or knife, whatever, machete. So, this was much more cleaner. It was much more smarter, and dare I say, more self-conscious about what it was actually trying to achieve. So, yes, I do think, without question, this is better than every version of Child's Play. And the only two that can possibly compare itself to this film is the first and second Child's Play film. Now, my next question, I already answered it, but I'll go and just clarify. Is it like every other January film? When I heard that M3GAN would drop in January, I immediately got nervous because January is where the worst movies come to play. And I am happy to announce that this is not your typical January film. In fact, it really makes me happy because if this is what we're getting in January, then I think the rest of the year, especially with regards to scary movies, is going to be pretty exciting. That's another thing I want to point out about this review, or I'm sorry, about this movie. I was really impressed with the visual effects. I was impressed with just about everything I was seeing on the screen. And yes, it did have a slow buildup, but in this case, it was not a bad slow buildup. And I tell you because, you're seeing something that doesn't quite, it doesn't quite render, in your mind, you're like, you're genuinely interested, not for the horror elements. You're interested because this is a new concept that you've never seen before. I believe one of the actors in the film even mentions that. He's just like, hey, this is something so new and revolutionary, and that's why it's going to sell a lot of units. But for the consumer or the person watching the film for the first time, you're like, yeah. So I want to say something though. There was one point in this film where I said to myself, yo, this doesn't even seem like a scary movie. And that is the magic of the M3GAN film. You feel like you're watching several different movies in one. And it's not until the third act or the final act that you realize, or not realize, but that you can see the horror elements. But I'll tell you, the first 30 minutes of this film felt like a survivor story for me. It felt like a little girl had lost her parents and she had struggled to get her balance back. And she was introduced to a new friend, and this friend was really helping to change her life. That's the first act for me, and it did not feel like a horror film at all. I mean, at one point, if you would have stopped the film right there, I would have said, "Hey, that was a great, like, heartwarming story." And that is the magic of this film. And I'm not going to tell you I cried because I didn't, but there's a scene in the film, and I just want to put it out there. It was really, really, it warmed you up a little bit, and I didn't cry. Okay, hey, I didn't cry. I did not cry. Chill. I did not cry. But I know when I'm feeling like kind of like, I know when I'm feeling emotionally manipulated, right? I can tell, I can feel my face get warm. And there's a scene in this movie where that happens. I'm like, dude, that was like such a beautiful moment. You know what I'm saying? Okay, but then the second act of the film, it feels like a freaking superhero movie or something, right? It feels like a duo superhero movie where a little girl discovers a doll, or not even a superhero movie, more like a fictional or superhero or tech driven superhero element type of movie, where a little girl finds, or what do you call it, an adventure movie even. A little girl finds a doll, and this doll comes to life. It felt like that kind of film, and these two become a sidekicking, a duo, and they go out and they fight crime against little boys and pull their ears off and stuff like that. That was the second half for me. I'm like, yo, if they stopped it right here, this would have been an amazing superhero movie. But then it starts to just kind of let loose, and then for the third act, you pretty much, you know what you're there for. You see the kills and stuff like that. So this film felt like three different films for me: a soul survivor film, a adventure superhero type of film like Jumanji, something into that, and then a horror film, and it was amazing. So even when it was slowly building up, I thought to myself rather, like, wait a minute, I'm still enjoying myself because this is amazing, right? So that happens. All right, is it scary? No, it is not scary in my personal opinion. I thought the film was pretty lukewarm when it comes to scares. I didn't think so. But there's a but. There were definitely some jump scares. The moment when they arrive to the house, something happens to the car window, and I'll just go ahead and say I was afraid just for a moment. I was like, oh crap, what the, you know what I'm saying? So yes, but that was about it for me when it comes to genuinely being like startled. Like, oh, okay. And really scares come from sound design for myself. I don't really get scared by imagery. A lot of times it's because it's a loud, like what the fuck? It's like a loud noise. So sound design is really important when it comes to scares for me. And though the film did have decent sound design, there was not many points in which I was afraid. It wasn't a moment where you're like, what's behind the corner? And it was never that, because M3GAN is, if she's a monster villain or movie villain, she's not the type she's not subtle. So there was never a point where you felt like, okay, is she coming? Or she was always there. It's like if she was in any of these horror films, there would be no noises, no creaks on the wall, no tapping of the nails on a banister, and none of that. She just comes out. And that's the charm of this particular character. She's very in your face. She never ever tries to sneak up on you. And I don't know if that was by design, but I will say it was refreshing. All right. Is it funny? Actually, it is. This film was a lot funnier than I anticipated. And a lot of the funny stuff came, like most of the things I found enjoyable or funny came from the doll itself because of the facial expressions. I mean, there was one point when I believe Gemma, the older lady, the older protagonist, not the little girl, there was one point where Gemma is giving some orders to M3GAN, and M3GAN kind of gave her like, "What you talking to?" Like one of those, and it was like hilarious. But I didn't laugh out loud, obviously. But in my head, I'm like, "Yo, that was like intense," because I'm like, if I bought a doll like this and gave it a command and it gave me that look, Like, dude, I'm taking it back. But let me just stop what I'm saying right now because I didn't take note of this. I want to make sure I point out something. There were several times while watching this film that I said this very thing. I'm going to tell you exactly what I said to myself. There were at least 5 times while watching this film where I thought to myself, I want one. I want one of these things. Okay, this doll, and I know if you haven't seen the film, you probably think you know, right? Because I thought I knew. I thought, okay, it's a doll that comes to life and it knows things. But when you see it in rhythm and you see it in motion, it's such a different experience. It's such a different connection that you get with a doll. And I thought to myself, I want one of these. And it's because she became so gravitated towards the little girl. Once they start to pair, because you had to touch the palm of the doll to pair. Once they pair and you see just how attentive M3GAN is to the little girl, I hate to say this, but I thought to myself, I wish I had a friend like that. You know, this friend is always there. They don't go anywhere else. They don't focus on anybody else. They don't focus on anything else. I mean, she was able to answer questions at the drop of a snap of a finger. And I'm like, dude, that's the best friend ever. And it's like you have a bodyguard following you around who never wants to do harm to you. And they just want to protect you. Now, this particular incident, or in this instance, this dog goes overboard, obviously. But, you know, there were several times while watching this film, I thought to myself, I want one of these. And the price tag offered in the film was $10,000. And let me tell you, if they could fix the bugs, I would pay $10,000 for this toy. Now, of course, I wouldn't buy a doll. Okay, that's a little over the top. But to have a companion of this magnitude, yes, right now, I would probably spend $10,000 for it because the way that she was able to adapt to the little girl and understand, and she became so smart at one point that she outsmarted the owner or the creator. So that's how smart this doll is or was. So you know, maybe some of that stuff, no, but just the fact that she was so protective, I really enjoyed seeing that element of the film. All right, would you rate what would you rate the movie? Okay, what would I rate this film? I've already kind of made it pretty obvious. I enjoyed the crap out of this film. And I did not expect that. I knew I would like it because it was so groundbreaking and different, but I didn't think I would like it this much. So for me, it's a 9.6. 9.6. I did a second rating though. The 9.6 is the score I would give this film if I compare it to other horror films. Okay, so amongst horror films, this is a classic in my personal opinion. I think that we are in a very rare space in scary movie history, right? Because I'm a big fan of scary movies. I can't hide it. I'm sorry. I can't help it. But I will say that I have to say that this movie is really up there. 9.6 for me. You know, just to kind of give you a taste of how much I enjoyed this film. I enjoyed this film more than the last Scream movie. Okay, I like the last Scream movie. I like the Scream franchise in general, but this was like maybe a pinch above it. It was certainly better than Halloween Kills. I'll tell you that. Okay, so I would give it a 9.6. But I did something for movie enthusiasts, for those people who don't really care about horror films in general, but they want to know how it compares to all movies, Avatars, the Titanics, Godfather. How does it compare in that realm? If you take it out of the horror movie realm or genre and just place it in movies in general, for me it will be an 8.4. I think amongst all types of movies, it still holds its own because of the special effects, because of how smart it is. It's very snappy and witty, and the pacing is very well established. There was not many points where I was like, all right, can we get this going? Like, this is starting to drag. It wasn't, I didn't get that a lot. Might have been 1 or 2 times in the film where I'm like, okay, all right, I get it. Okay, they're cool. They're really joined at the hip. I get it. Now come on, get to the kids. Let's go. Maybe once or twice that happened, but it didn't happen enough where I didn't enjoy the film. Obviously, 9.6 if you're looking at this from a horror movie perspective. 8.4 if you're looking at it from a entirety perspective. Now, if you want to understand how I view movies, for me, Titanic is a 10 out of 10. It's one of my favorite movies. Malcolm X by Spike Lee is a 10 out of 10 for me. You probably wouldn't know this film, but Crooklyn by Spike Lee is a 10 out of 10 for me. It's just such a great film in my personal opinion. Let me give you one more. Scarface is a 10 out of 10 for me. You know, stuff like that, right? So like really, really good films. I like films, Public Enemy with Johnny Depp. That was like a 9.8 for me. It's a great movie. So that's my understanding. That's how I view movies. So maybe you might be a little different or indifferent in that particular aspect. All right. Are there any plot holes where the story doesn't make sense? Absolutely. Okay. I've been waiting for this particular portion, so I hope you didn't leave, because maybe you can jump in the comment section to help me out. If you're watching this at a later time, then perhaps you can jump in the comments and help me understand this as well. Listen, I got a lot of questions, and I didn't realize I had these questions until I sat down and wrote down some notes. But let's just get it out the way, okay? All right. So I want to understand. I don't, and I feel like the only reason I'm looking at it this way is because I own several businesses now, so I understand the concept of liability more so than the average person might care to think about stuff like that. So as a business owner, I'm thinking to myself, and I'm watching this film with that lens in place. And okay, so here you go. You got a company, Funky, by the way. Funky company was Funky. I have no idea who came up with that. I'm not sure if that was a joke, but I was like, that's a dumb name for an entire company. But anyway, the point is, I'm watching this film, and Funky creates this doll via their super intelligent designer, whatever. Okay, Gemma. She creates this doll, and the doll is in beta, right? So the doll has not really been released to the public. There's not a lot of information about the doll. In fact, there's nothing out there about the doll. So the first confusion for me was, why is Gemma allowing this doll that is in beta creation time frame, whatever, it's in the early stages of its development. Why is she allowing this doll out in the public at all? It's still a test subject. It's still being tested. So I was very confused. It's still a test subject. It's still being tested. So I was very confused. Like, why is Gemma allowing the doll to free roam so much? There was a point in the film where the little girl wants to take Meg to a summer camp or some kind of summer school type of deal. And of course, Gemma was against it, because you don't want the doll to get out and be exposed, because by this point in the film, the doll has been relegated as a huge success. Okay, everyone knows that this doll is revolutionary, and hey, we want to get this on a assembly line and replicate it as quickly as possible. So at that particular point, we know that this is a gold mine. But Gemma is allowing the doll and the little girl to go out in public and be seen by multiple people. In fact, the film makes very light of this. You see other people who see the doll and they react to the doll like, hey, so is that a person? And Gemma's like, no, it's a doll. And they're like, oh, okay. Like if you were looking at someone walking in the street and you saw a full-grown, a fully processed android walking next to their servant, you're gonna be like, your first thing you're gonna say to yourself is, what the heck is going on? The second thing you're gonna say to yourself, where do I get one of these at? You know what I mean? How much does it cost? So I was very confused. Why are they allowing the doll to go out in public as much? Because obviously you can have people take pictures. We live in the social media age. You don't think when people saw this doll moving the way that she was moving, they didn't take pictures of it, right? And then post it online. Look what I saw today. So that was a little confusing for me. Okay, the next plot hole that completely throws me off is when the kills start to happen. So if you watched the film, if you didn't watch the film, sorry. But the point is, you're watching this now, so you obviously want the answers, and you're here, you're ready to talk about it. Okay, but we know that the next door neighbor to Gemma and the little girl and M3GAN had some problems. The dog was a huge issue. And we also know that eventually M3GAN kills the dog. M3GAN kills the dog owner. Who she kills? Oh, she kills the little boy, right? That's 3 deaths within like a week time frame. And then on top of that, the owner and one of the other employees gets killed by M3GAN as well. So that's 5 deaths in about maybe a week. It didn't seem like they stretched the time out too far. It seemed like all these deaths happened in a week, maybe 5 or 6 days. And 2 questions came to my mind when I saw that. Number one, where is the liability? You're wondering, okay, the dog gets killed. The police come by and knock on Gemma's door and say, hey, do you know where the dog's at? Okay, that's a coincidence. Then the dog owner dies. It's like the police comes back, knock on the door. Hey, so do you know what happened? I don't know what happened. Like, wait a minute. And the little boy dies before the dog. So let me go back a little bit. So the little boy dies before the dog and the dog owner. So it's like, that's 3 deaths, and they all circle around Gemma. And then you got two bodies that pop up at the office where M3GAN kind of breaks loose and goes crazy. So that's 5 deaths where they all happen around the same area, around the same people. Like, dude, and they all happen within like 5 days apart. Like within 5 days, 5 people drop dead around Gemma. I'm wondering, like, hey, cops, look, I'm not a police officer, I'm not an investigator or anything like that. But if 5 people die, and every one of these people are in some way attached to this one person, you don't think you just bring her in for some conversation? Because in this film, they don't even do that. All right. And then here's my second confusion. Once everything, comes to an end, the end of the movie, arrives, and everybody is like walking outside with a little sweater over their shoulders, and the police sirens are blaring. I mean, how many movies end like that where you had the protagonist walking out with like some kind of cover over their shoulder, and the lights are blaring? They finally arrive, the police, and they're like sitting on the hatch of a ambulance table or something weird like that. Like, once that happens, how do you explain this? If you're the little girl or Gemma, how do you explain this? So the dog killed everybody. Okay, how do you explain that without sounding absolutely crazy? How do we get a sequel when Gemma should be in jail? Because if this is real life, even if Gemma is absolutely telling the truth, hey, it was the dog had a malfunction. And so as an investigator, I'm going to say, well, the little boy died first, and the malfunction killed the little boy. Okay, got it. Okay, so that's what you're saying. You're admitting that. Okay, great. Then the dog kills a dog, and then the dog kills the dog owner. You admit that as well? Yes. Okay, you're going to jail. That's it. You want to know why? Because you created the thing that killed these 3 people. Not only should she be in jail, but she should be sued she should be sued out of her pajamas. Okay, civil suits. And this is my point. As a business owner, I'm like, if I create a toy or something that kills people, I'm going to be liable. And it doesn't matter that I had good intentions. Okay, so that's the confusion I had in this film. I'm like, why is she not in jail? Why doesn't the film end with her in handcuffs being walked to a police car and being charged with some type of, how do you even charge somebody with that? But the fact that the film just doesn't address it at all, that's the confusion for me. Okay, and if I'm the parent in the film, or I should say the parent in the film who lost her son, once it all comes out where Gemma created this doll that went crazy and psycho, once that comes out to the public, is she not going to file a lawsuit or some kind of wrongful death lawsuit? Because this woman created a machine that was founded by this woman created a machine that was supported by Funky. So at some point, I'm just wondering, is Funky going to get sued? Is Gemma going to be sued? Those were real questions I had. So, I'm just like, what's going on? And then, okay, then you see M3GAN kill the owner, or I should say the manager of Funky, and then the other co-worker. She kills them both inside the elevator. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. So modern elevators should have cameras in them. And even if they did not, once M3GAN leaves the elevator, she's right there in the open, right? She's right there in the open. She walks out. She hops into a vehicle. So I'm thinking to myself, at what point are these cameras going to work? At what point is this going to become mass hysteria? Even though Gemma survives at the end, I would imagine that if this was a real life event, the cameras are going to show M3GAN walking out. They're going to show her killing these 2 people. That's going to go viral. That's going to go crazy. And I would imagine that Gemma should be on trial for creating this doll. And she did not report her findings to the police. Once she finds out that M3GAN is some type of terrorist doll, she just tries to shut her down and deprogram her and wrap her up in bubble tape, if you can believe that. She wraps her up in bubble tape and just leaves her at the office. Like, hey, this doll is a killer possibly. I'm going to leave her here wrapped in bubble tape, right? And I'm going to leave her here on the couch. And I'm going to go home with my little, whatever. Like, dude, that's irresponsible. If you created a killer doll, you might want to take every battery out this thing. But that doesn't happen in this film. Gemma simply lays her on the couch, takes her back to the office, and say, hey, figure it out. Like, dude, like, what the heck? So I'm just saying to myself, because a lot of people are talking about a sequel. Because at the end of the film, we see that M3GAN kind of jumps into the Alexa doll from, Gemma's house. And I'm like, hey, sounds kind of cool, right? Like, hey, so M3GAN's not really gone. She's going to kind of morph into Alexa. And then, she's going to find a little host and kind of go into the, I guess kind of cool, right? Wait a minute. How are you going to get to a sequel? Because Gemma should be in jail. Okay, I know a lot of people are gonna be like, "Hey, Rick, you're completely overthinking this. Like, come on, it's a movie." But I can't not see that, okay? Because, like I said, as a business owner, I'm thinking to myself, "Are you kidding me?" All right, this doll, and the fact that she had a suspicion that the dog killed the boy, the dog, and the dog owner. She doesn't report it. She takes it to the office, in which the dog at the office kills two more people, and there were kids at the office, and Megan could have just went crazy on all those kids. Like, dude, come on. There's no liability. No liability? All right. I'll follow along. Where's the lawsuit? Funky would be funky, man. Hey, so I had to I had to bring it up. What does it say? Oh yeah, exactly. I'm looking at my notes. And then there's one point where the psychiatrist gets like into a heated argument with the little girl because the little girl is having like withdrawal symptoms from being with Megan every day. And once Gemma suspects Megan of being crazy, she takes Megan and kind of bubble wraps her and takes her back to the office. So the little girl is panicking and going crazy, and she's about to like argue and fight with the psychiatrist. And I'm like, if that is a real psychiatrist, she's going to recognize that aggression and say, "Hey, something's wrong here in this household or in this setting. I'm going to take this little girl and move her somewhere else." Because after the psychiatrist leaves out of the room and Gemma steps in, the little girl punches Gemma so hard that I'm like, dude, that was a Mike Tyson punch out punch. So if I'm a psychiatrist and I'm seeing all this, I'm like, yo, there's no way I'm going to allow this little girl to stay in your possession because clearly you're doing something wrong. So those were the plot holes. I didn't want to spend there or stay there too long because, like I said, I enjoyed the film. But dude, those plot holes are going to rattle some people. Okay. Anyway, let me see. Oh, final thoughts. All right. This is the last good Megan film. Okay, I want to talk about a few more things before I close this out. I just want to just put it out there on the radar. This is the last good Megan film because Hollywood is going to do to this film what they do to all films. They're gonna drench it. They're gonna run it dry. Okay, I remember when, for an example, one of my favorite horror movies of all time, Sinister. I remember watching the first Sinister and how I felt when I left the movie theater. I was like, this is one of the best horror films I've ever seen. And I was like just clamoring for Sinister 2. So when Sinister 2 came out, I watched it, and I said to myself, it's happening. This is terrible. I'll give you another example. One of my other favorite horror films, Jeepers Creepers. When that first came out, the very first Jeepers Creepers to me was like a masterpiece. Like, I'm like, this is one of the best horror films I've ever seen. And then the second one was still pretty decent. Okay, the second one was okay. The third one was absolutely terrible. And I think they came out with a fourth one. That one was terrible. And the one after that was terrible. So it's just like, I'm just going to go ahead and say it right now for anybody who cares. This is the last good Megan, probably in a long time. It'll probably take 10 years before they make another good Megan film. So when you watch it, really embrace it. And I don't mean that as a sponsor or a supporter of the film to that degree, but what I'm saying is enjoy it and don't think about stuff like liability investigations and don't think about that kind of stuff because this is going to be the last good Megan film for 10 years because the sequel is going to be probably be terrible. It probably will not feature the same cast members. Perhaps she'll be moved and she'll become an android of a different type. So they're going to water this thing down to the molecule. So enjoy it, appreciate it for what they tried to do because this will be the last one. It'll take maybe 10 years, right? After the franchise has just been ran into the ground, it'll take 10 years for them to recalibrate and come up with another good Megan film, and that's my prediction. I think the second one will be okay, but after that, it's done. It's going to go into somebody's hands who doesn't really know what's going on. They're just trying to make a name for themselves. It's going to be a gore fest. You know how this goes. I'm just telling you what I think is going to happen. But I also want to talk about this idea in its entirety. The whole idea of a smart doll. I want to just put it out there because I was watching the film and I thought to myself, how long until this becomes our reality? And I'll tell you, if this is the year 2023, you can expect this to work like it works in the film, minus the murders, obviously, but you can expect this in the year 2033. I mean, that's pretty obvious. I think that I believe that life will imitate art in this particular case. This technology is already out there. All right, I was watching something the other day where a Tesla driver was like so relaxed and allowing auto drive to do everything, so relaxed that his hand was back here and his car was driving by itself, and it smacked right into another vehicle because at some point people actually believe that technology is as functional or as intelligent as a human being. That video of the Tesla driver took place in 2022, just a year ago, right? So what I'm trying to say is we're not far off from people trusting technology to this particular degree. We're not that far away. And if we have smart cars to do that, and I mean, look at you in your phone, right? How many things do you put into your phone? How much do you trust your phone? How long until these developers create a algorithm that can take the things that you're putting in your phone and place it into a humanoid? Okay, how long does that? I mean, how do we know that the people who work Google and search engines, right? How do we know they're not going to take all the data that we feed into Google? How many questions have you fed into Google, right? Over the last 10 years. For me, probably thousands of questions have been typed into the Google search bar. How long until all those questions that are probably stored on some server somewhere in the United States, in Australia, right? How long until all that information, all that data is able to be processed in a chip this big? How long? All right. And then placed into a humanoid, in which that particular humanoid can continue to grow smarter, especially as we move into the 5G era. Okay. And then that particular doll can continue to get smart as people type in new questions. And then that doll will be able to respond. How long until we get there? Because we're already pretty much there. Okay. So I do want to take just a segment here and just say how much I appreciated this film for feeling like a 2023 film. Okay, if I was talking to myself back in let's say 2011, and I know myself, I would have said, "Hey, 2011, what is a really cool movie that really takes advantage of the technological advances that you have in the year 2023?" I would have showed them this film, like, "Hey, take a look at this. You think you got something in 2011? What you watching? What you watching? What is that? What was a movie in 2011? A 2011 movie. Here we go. Hey Siri, show me a list of 2011 movies." Bridesmaid. Okay, The Hangover 2. All right, Pirates of the Caribbean. Okay, so if I'm in that particular time frame, Skyfall, James Bond, Toy Story 2, Small Fry, The Vow, Captain America, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, Mission Impossible, Rio. You remember that one? Final Destination 5. Okay, cool. So I just watched Final Destination 5. The year is 2011, and then myself from 2023 pops up, and I say, "Hey, I just watched this terrible Final Destination movie, which is another classic that got ruined over time. Final Destination 1 was amazing, and then it just went to garbage. That's what's going to happen to M3GAN, okay? So anyway, I just watched Final Destination 5, and I'm talking to myself, and I'm saying, "Hey, so you got any cool movies from 2023? Oh my gosh, I'm going to show them this, and I'm going to be like, oh, so that's what's waiting for me." So I really appreciated this film for feeling like a 2023 movie. And heck, some people might argue that this felt like a 2024 movie. It just felt so new and fresh. It was so crisp and clean. The doll movements were immaculate. There were several times in my history in watching Child's Play where I thought to myself, that looks kind of cheesy. That looks kind of bad. Just watching Chucky move. Sometimes the robot kind of like glitched a little. I didn't have any of those moments because, again, they did a hybrid thing where they had an actual Matronic doll or Android doll, and then there was sometimes the little girl was acting as the doll. So they just did an amazing job with swapping that out so well that I really couldn't tell the difference. Okay, so anyway, this idea is coming. I'm gonna give it 10 years. I think in 10 years you'll have something to this degree. In fact, some people would argue that we already have it. Okay, our phone is collecting data, but it's only so long before they take this phone and put it into a humanoid type of doll or companion, and that doll will know as much as this phone. There is nothing I can't ask this phone where it will not give me an answer. You want to test it out? I mean, why not? Okay, so how long until they take this data, right? This chip, whatever powers this, how long until Apple says, "Hey, we've already made a chip that can pretty much answer and do anything ever"? How long until they take that chip and put it into an animatronic, whatever? If they can do it in Hollywood, they can. It would only be usually Hollywood is about 5 years in front of real science or real technical advances, right? Usually. But let's see. Hey Siri, what color do you get when you mix red and blue?
Here's an answer from reference.com. If you mix an equal amount of red and blue together, you'll have violet, the tertiary color.
Okay. All right. We already got technology. Watch this. Hey Siri, what is 777,000 times 940?
It's 730,380,000.
I bet you didn't know that. So can we just point out that this technology is already smarter than us? Already smarter than us. It's already able to do math, this type of math, in mere seconds. Seconds. So it's already smarter than me. Okay? So how long until this technology is placed into a humanoid? 10 years? 15? Let's do another one. That was impressive. Hey Siri, what is 8,000,008 times 740,000?
The answer is approximately 5.9.
Do you see that?
10 to the 12th power.
If that didn't scare you, okay, this number is so big, I don't even know if I know how to read it. Okay, what is that? Thousands, 100,000s, millions, billion, 5 trillion. 5 trillion. That was in seconds. Is it not registering yet? So this is coming, y'all. This is coming. All right. I just hope they work out the bugs before it gets here. Okay, my last point. I know this is a very long video, but you know, who cares? What are you doing? If you're watching me on a Saturday, you ain't doing nothing. You're just talking. All right. So I want to just say this very last point. Okay, this horror film gets a couple bonus notches from me because they kept it classy. Man, it's so hard to get classiness and horror in the same pot. And this film achieved it. And it wasn't that boring, irritating, advanced. What do they call it? Elevated horror. I hate that. I hate the word too. All right. It wasn't elevated horror where the movie is real slow paced, is boring, and people who like it say it's smart. No, it's not smart. It's boring. I'll tell you the perfect example of a movie like that. Shutter Island with Leonardo DiCaprio. Shutter Island with Leonardo DiCaprio. Okay, that's elevated horror, I guess. And let me tell you, I'm cool with calling it elevated horror if we can just say it was terrible. Okay, because the movie was absolutely terrible. All right, but that's what this was for me. It was just so classy. Even the kills, they pull away from the actual gruesomeness. They don't show you that. You see a lot of blood, which I was very confused about. A lot of profanity. All right. There was a little girl. Somebody brought their like 8-year-old child to see this film, as if this was like a Disney film. I actually saw them walk in front of me, and I'm just thinking to myself, "Yo, this is like not the kind of movie you want to bring an 8-year-old girl." And the little girl looked innocent, like she's going to go see Beauty and the Beast or the little frog. You know, I was like, why are you bringing her in here? And then at some point in the film, a character says Hasbro is going to eat our D words or something like that. And I heard that same parent go, I'm like, what did you expect? Like, this is a horror film. Why would you bring your child here? A little girl of all things. It's like the little girl's like, oh, mom, I want to see M3GAN. I want to see M3GAN. And it was like, hey, this ain't that kind of movie, young lady. Did you see the whole premise is not about a little girl and her companion and how they go and explore stuff. This ain't what that is. This is a horror film, right? You just like, oh, mom, I like her dances. I like her dances. I want to go see it. Like, this ain't that kind of film. So, but they kept it very classy. A lot of the blood, it was there, but it didn't like gross you out so much. The dog kill, you didn't see it, but you know what happened. The dog owner kill was pretty gruesome. It was pretty gruesome, right? Kind of, but it was classy gruesome. All right, it wasn't so bad. It was classy. Who else died in this film? Oh, the little boy, the air pool. That was kind of, but it wasn't bloody though. It wasn't bloody, and the way that he dies wasn't bloody either. Oh, it was kind of bloody. You saw the blood trail, but you didn't see the hit. Like if this was made by like, you know, some of those horror guys, you know what I'm talking about. If it was made by like a Wes Craven, oh, but you would have saw particles and all. You didn't see that in this film, so it's classy in that way. The two employees, the boss who gets stabbed, that was pretty classy. I didn't see much. The guy who gets impaled, that was kind of like the sound design is what sold it. It wasn't what you saw. It was the sound design. So again, this film gets extra points just being classy. And I liked it. It made me ask a question to myself, and I'll pose this question to you. If you made it this far, you're a real OG. I don't know how you got this far, but I want to ask you a question. And this is the question I asked myself as I was watching this film. I said to myself, have I been watching the wrong type of horror for all this time? Because I initially thought that I liked the gruesomeness, and this film really didn't have any of that, and I enjoyed it this much. So it made me wonder to myself: are horror films in need of change? Are horror films in need of some type of evolution where it's not all about the bone cracking and the blood spewing? For example, there's a movie called Terrifier 2 that came out. I heard so much about it. I might have watched it for like 3 minutes, and I was like, I'm gonna throw up. I don't want to watch this anymore. It was just so gory, so bloody, and it was so gory and bloody that it didn't feel like the writers took enough time to write things that made sense because their entire selling point was the blood and gore. So it's just like, I don't want to watch this. I'm not. I would have to be in the mood to watch blood and gore for me to actually want to sit here and watch this. What made me enjoy this film is because of the premise, the context, the story, the build up. It was so many other elements. So it made me wonder to myself, is this the type of horror that I don't even know if you can call it horror. It was more science fiction than anything. So it made me wonder, do I actually like science fiction movies with a little bit of a horror edge? Like a little squeeze of horror in it. Maybe I'm not a full blown horror fan. I just like good stories, right? But anyway, that is something that came into my mind, and I'm wondering to myself, did other people feel that way after watching this film? It didn't really show a lot of blood and gore, and maybe the first half of the film was just a little girl and her companion loving on each other. Like, it wasn't even a horror movie for the first half of the film, but I still freaking enjoyed it. 9.6 enjoyed it. So that's all I got, man. I don't know. Once you go see the movie, if you haven't, come back and let me know how far I'm off from how you saw the film or how close I am. If you did see the film, if you have any answers to how this woman avoids going to jail after creating a killer doll, and this killer doll kills on camera, can you explain to me how this doesn't hit social media? Right? Can you explain any of that for me, please? Okay. But anyway, thank you for watching. I will see you on the next one. Peace.